Well, thanks for inviting me again. My name is McGrath, and I'll give you a little bit of the background. Brought up in the Boston area, and I met my wife when we were in high school, senior years. For senior year, I had just graduated. We lived our working and kid life in Connecticut, near Hartford and Glastonbury. And then my wife and I were talking about retirement, and we said, where do you want to retire to? And what we came to is we want to retire to some place the kids will come and visit us. So we scouted around and we had vacationed on Cape Cod with the kids, and we said that would be a nice place. And so we bought a house here 26 years ago, and it's just been great. And we have our 3 kids here, their spouses, and the 7 grandkids. So, welcome, kids. Well, tonight we're going to talk about a variety of things. I gave a talk a while ago here, and was rushed at the end and left out some topics, and we'll discuss those. Plus, we'll discuss some new ones. And let me go to the Eastham Museum. Here's the menu for tonight. One of the things I left out before was a talk on the dune shacks. Have any of you stayed in a dune shack in Provincetown? Oh, it's a real highlight. Patty and I have done that twice. If you belong to the Peaked Hill Trust, you put your name in a list, and maybe in 5 years you'll get called and, hey, there's a shack for you. And then you have that, and you put your name in again. There's also another organization, the Provincetown Compact, and they manage 3 shacks. And they manage them for artists. And you have to submit your portfolio to get a shack. And the portfolio is reviewed by experts. And I tried that once, I didn't even get an answer. But in the application, they said, if you want to submit $25, we're putting in a weekend that you might get without being an artist. And Patty and I won that once, so that was good. So as a result of that, we have stayed in the dune shack for 3 weeks. There was dune shacks. That's the well shack. And we'll take a look at that. This is a real estate pitch on this. There's a shack, come on in, I'll show you around. There's a nice cozy bedroom on the left. There's a bedroom in the living room for your naps. There's a table that has lamps at night that you can read by and do your writings. There's a living room with a wood-burning stove. There's a well-equipped kitchen that has a great view. And it even has a separate building with a toilet in it. If you're near the ocean, the neighbors are pretty quiet. A great backyard. The grandkids love it, and by the way, those grandkids are 24 and 25 and sitting in. So that was a while ago. It's a historic place, which we'll talk about later. The neighborhood is just gorgeous. And it's near a big city of Provincetown. So the dune shack, we spent 3 weeks there. They're very nice. There's another dune shack, and this is the artist dune shack I talked about. The seascape. Nice rustic setting. When we first walked in, we said, what kind of creep was here before us to catch those bugs and string them all up? And somebody came in, a guest came in later, a friend of ours, and said, Mark, those aren't bugs. Those are Rosa rugosa bulbs that have faded away, and they just strung up the bulbs. And you can see the stems at the top of each one of them. So that was put to rest. Nice hats for sunny days. Walking in the grasslands was just great. Oh, that was why at night you live by those lamps. And I was out there to relax and just have a good time. And I said, well, I will light these lamps, these oil lamps. And all I got was smoke. So I turned down the air, still got smoke, turned it up, I tried everything. Lit new wicks. And I spent an hour of frustration trying to get the lamps to work properly. I guess there's quite an art to that. Mary Orr was a poet who lived in Provincetown, won the Pulitzer Prize, was probably the best known American poet for a number of years. And she lived in Provincetown, and every day she'd get out and walk around the ponds and so forth. And this poem here is hanging on the wall of that dune shack. 8 o'clock, no later, you light the lamps. The big one by the large window, the small one on your desk, they are not to see by. It is just to, oh, I can't read it, but it's a delightful poem. One night we went down and said, let's get down and see the sunset. And I said, we're the only ones out here. We'll be all alone. And we get down, sat down on the edge of the cliff and saw that sunset. And I said to Patty, what are all those campers doing ruining our views? You know, and I said, that's not right. They shouldn't be allowed there. But then you think, those people have a lot more invested in being where they are than I did. I invested a couple $100 to stay for a week. They invested 20,000. They deserve that a lot more than I do. So in our minds, or in my mind, I became friends with those folks. Safe travels, campers. Okay, let's take another one. This is one about Henry Thoreau. He wrote a book called Cape Cod. In the late 40s, he made 3 visits to Cape Cod. And back home in Concord, he was a speaker. He went to Harvard, a smart guy. And he was traveling to Cape Cod once, just to collect stories they could tell back in Concord. But then he loved it and he came back again. And he loved it some more and he came back again. So he wrote this book. It was published after his death from his notes. So we'll talk about a couple of features of that book. On one of the, I think it was his first trip, he was just wandering through, it's like a desert. From Provincetown down to Brewster, there were no trees. It was just one big sandscape. All of the trees had been cut down for lumber, for ships' masts, for houses, the wood burned at night, and there weren't any trees left. So you could see for miles just by standing on the top of a dune. And at one point he came across a house and said, that might be a nice place to stay. And went up and knocked on the door. And we'll discuss that. That's the house of the Oyster Man. It's in Wellesley. It's still preserved. In fact, our rent is in there right now. The front door. The view. And this, that's Henry David Thoreau going up to the front door. And now, the owner of this house is John Newcomb. And 7 generations later, his sons and daughters are still around. And one of them, Cecil Newcomb, I played platform tennis with. So I got Cecil and Henry David Thoreau to reenact their initial exchange as Henry wrote about it. There's Cecil Newcomb. We are from Concord.
What business is yours?
Reading a book about Cape Cod.
How far is Concord from Boston?
20 miles by railroad.
20 miles by railroad.
Didn't you ever hear of Concord, of Revolutionary fame?
Didn't I ever hear of Concord? Why, I heard the guns fire at the Battle of Bunker Hill. I am 88 years old. I was 14 at the time of the Concord fight. Where were you?
We were not in the fight.
Come in.
That was, you know how sometimes when two men meet each other in a situation like that, they have to throw a few punches, duke it out, and then they resolve that? Well, that's exactly the way Henry wrote about that exchange. So they were going back and forth, and they came in. They had a nice discussion. They were given a bedroom, and as soon as they were in it, John and his wife came and locked the door so they couldn't get out and cause harm. And she opened it the next morning, but she fed them, and they just had a great relationship. Now, that story about him hearing the guns at the Battle of Bunker Hill intrigued me. Now, it's about 55 miles from Wellesley to Boston, but there wasn't a tree on it. So loud sounds could indeed travel that far, especially the loud cannons that were on the boats. So that tracks. I digress. So let's follow that thread about Newcomb hearing the cannons at the Battle of Bunker Hill. The Battle of Bunker Hill was in June, whatever it is, 250 years ago last month. It was kind of a celebration that it's happening at this time. And here's the battleship, the Somerset. I think it's the biggest one there, firing up at all of the American troops on the top. And fortunately, it was a battleship, and they fired at each other. The battleship couldn't lift the cannons high enough to get the troops, the Americans that were up the top of the hill. It turned out Battle of Bunker Hill was the bloodiest battle in the whole Revolutionary War. There was no other battle that killed more people than this battle. And fortunately for the Americans, of the 1,400 people killed in that battle, 1,200 of them were British soldiers. And the Americans only lost about 200. And the reason that this is Boston, their troops were sent over in the line like this, and they marched up the line in formation. And the Americans at the top could just easily mow them down, and more people came up, and it was just a bloody piece. So that happened back in 1775. The bloodiest battle of the war. The British general, we expected rather to punish a mob than fight troops that would look us in the face. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, I don't know, 30, 40 years later, wrote in his poem, All Revere's Ride. Just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset, British man of war. A phantom ship with each mast and spar across the moon like a prisoner bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Okay. It turns out in 1778, the Somerset was rolling Cape Cod, and it devastated the Cape Cod economy. It was big, it was fast, there was no defense against it. And what they do was look for fishing boats. And fishing was the economy of Cape Cod at the time. But if any Cape Cod fishermen set out to catch fish, the Somerset would get them. Take all their fish and put the sail in the British Navy. But in 1778, the Somerset hit a sandbar out just off Provincetown, and it sunk. And it didn't sink, but it was on a sandbar. And in storms like that, Once you're caught in the sandbar, it's like a vice. Then the next wave just smashes your boat, and the next wave smashes it, and all the people fairly drown. But the captain of the ship had 495 sailors on board. The captain rowed ashore, and he was greeted by 14 militiamen from the town of Thoreau. And the captain said, "If you save my men, I'll surrender to you." Well, in the morning, the tide went out, and everybody walked off the ship onto shore. And the captain said, "Okay, here's my sword, I surrender to you." And these 14 men now were in charge of 495 British sailors. What are they going to do? Well, they took them home, they split them up, and the sailors went and tried out at the home of the Thoreau militia and the other folks. And then the Thoreau militia said, "Okay, we got to capture these. What are we going to do with them?" Well, they marched the 490 people down to Wellfleet and said, "Wellfleet militia, you take them to Dennis." And the Dennis folks, you take them. And finally, they took the 490 people and got them back to Boston. Unless you're an officer. And officers were treated differently. Officers, they said, "You're special. You treat our officers nice, we'll treat yours nice." So they were all given rides on boats back to Boston. One thing, the Thoreau militia wasn't really interested in doing anything with these guys. They had a boat there with provisions for 495 guys. They had lots of cloth, lots of foodstuffs, lots of everything, including cannons. So their militia was really excited about getting back, scavenging everything off the boat they could. Everybody was going to be rich after that. In fact, there were big court fights after that. Who's going to get to keep this? Should the Providence people get Providence town people get any of the money or not? Well, 100 years later, in 1886, the sands of Provincetown washed away in a storm and exposed the wreck of the Somerset. It happened again in 1973, with a little bit more exposed. And then in 2010, it happened again. And I saw a piece in the paper that Somerset has been exposed again. It's up on Provincetown Beach. So I went up there and just took a picture of it. And so that's my connection to the Revolutionary War, to Henry David Thoreau, and to history. I'm kind of fortunate about that. Now, back to Thoreau's visit with John Newcomb. They got up and had breakfast this morning, in the morning. They had eels, buttermilk cake, cold bread, green beans, donuts, tea, applesauce, and tobacco juice. And as they were sitting there, the oyster man kept spitting into the fireplace. And Thoreau and his partner, Elliot Channing, had a big discussion. And Elliot would say to Henry, I saw him spitting in the area of the donuts. And Henry, no, he wasn't. He was spitting on the green beans. So they had this huge argument back and forth, where the oyster man was spitting. Okay, that's Henry's story. The story is, the title of that chapter is called The Oyster Man. And in Henry David Thoreau, the history of Henry, he was not noted as a comedian. He was a real serious guy. And this chapter is listed as Henry's most entertaining and humorous chapter he ever wrote. There's another thing with the oyster man. They were talking about religion. And this kind of bothered me. The oyster man was talking about the Bible. What I gather from the Bible is this. Man is a good-for-nothing critter. I'm a good-for-nothing critter. These women his wife and her sister, are both good for not critters. And you look at that and say, gee, the oyster man was a nice, upstanding guy. And to go through life with that being beat into you, that you're nothing but a good, nothing but an old critter, just really rubbed me the wrong way about religion in those days and what they talked about and what the believings they put into you. Politics. The Dome. Now the Domes were one of the upstanding, richest people on Cape Cod. They were in Brewster and out here in Wellesley. The Dome, an old Tory, who was a pro-British guy. And most of the people with money were making money. They didn't want to change anything. They wanted to keep the system they had now. They wanted to keep the British in power. So they didn't like the idea of Americans or natives trying to overthrow this. So Mr. Dome was saying, well, Uncle Bill, that's the Earthman's father, you might as well undertake to pitch that pond into the ocean with a pitchfork as for the colonies to undertake gaining their independence. You know, we were all brought up that, you know, it was the Americans, they were right, and this guy is just so opposite of that, and thinking it was impossible for the colonists to win independence. The Franklin shipwreck. Oh, the oyster man, he tells about the Franklin shipwreck. Being an old man, first he ate his breakfast and then walked over to the top of the hill by the shores and sat down and watched the ship sink. And he was talking about the people that were jumping off and drowning after that. The epilogue. That's Duck Creek Cemetery. It's right on Route 6. It's on your right just before you turn left to go to Wellfleet Center. And in that cemetery is the graves of John Newcomb and his 3 relatives. John Newcomb is on the right, and from right to left, his wife Thankful, their daughter Thankful, their son John, and sister Eunice, and they all died about the same time. And that's a picture just taken recently. Thoreau died 10 years after the visit at age 44. Okay, any questions on that? Any comments on Thoreau or the book Cape Cod? Okay. Let's, a quick one on Mary Oliver. She wrote a book called On Blackwater Pond. And Blackwater Pond is another name for a pond that's in Wellfleet, or in Provincetown. And she used to walk around that every day. The Blackwater Pond, the tossed waters that settled after a night of rain. And it goes on, and it really is a nice feeling about her feeling for nature and Cape Cod. And somebody, I like this, this is her feeling on Cape Cod. People say to me, wouldn't you like to see Yosemite, the Bay of Fundy, the Brooks Range? I smile and answer, oh yes, sometimes. And I go off to my woods, my ponds, my sun-filled harbor. No more than a blue comma on the map of the world, but to me, the emblem of everything. And that was her feeling on Cape Cod, which is kind of nice. She lived in Provincetown for, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. And finally, bad health brought her to Florida. She had to get down there, and she died there 15 years ago. There's the lamp that we were talking about before. I bought a book of her short story writing, and she wrote one on turtles. And she'd be walking around Blackwater Pond and see the tracks of a turtle, and she'd follow the tracks, and this is where the turtle lives. And the female turtle went in there, she saw them went in there and laid eggs. And then the turtle went back down to the pond, and Mary said, I want to see what those eggs look like. And she took them out one at a time. And she counted there were 27 turtles, or 27 eggs. And she took 13 of them and put them in a bag and went home and scrambled them. And she was talking about this, like this is it. And I think Mary Oliver was so into nature. And you know, big birds eat little birds, and big fish eat little fish, and the whole chain of evolution, and just live it. And she just wanted to be part of it. She wanted to be part of the exchange. So she went in there and took the eggs and scrambled them and felt very good about it. And she said they didn't taste very good. So that's Mary Oliver. Oh, this is another, I have covered this in other talks, but I think the last time I was here, this is next week. So Rennie, if you cross-country skiers, okay, there's somebody back there. Cape Cod.
You can do downhill too.
Pardon me?
You can ski downhill on Cape.
Yeah.
Down the dunes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Cape Cod has the best cross-country skiing in the country. And now some people would question that, but they won't. So 11 reasons why cross-country skiing is the best on Cape Cod is it's always warm weather, a lot warmer than Vermont, Colorado. It's flat. There's never a trail fee to pay. There are unlimited number of trails. It's easy to commute to the cross-country trails. The scenery by attraction surf, can you do that in Colorado? Ski with seals, try that in Vermont. An inch of snow is enough to ski on the beach. And there's a 40-mile trail, which I don't think any cross-country area in the world has a straight 40-mile trail. And you can get down to Eastham, get on the trail, and ski all the way around Provincetown to the lighthouse, and you ski the trail 40 miles. The trails are never crowded, and after skiing, you're never far from a pub or ice cream. Now, there is a footnote down there on the right that says, yeah, but you don't get enough snow. So it's kind of 11 to 1. So cross-country skiing is great. We've done it for years, and just to get up in the morning, hey, there's snow, let's get down to the beach before it melts, and you get down to the beach. Let's go. And here are just some pictures. Cross-country skiing with friends. It's great to get out into winter and ski with friends. There's my wife Patty. Skiing by the surf. Skiing near a seal. Patty was just skiing along. Yeah, there's a seal right here. They both look pretty happy. This is down in Chatham. More skiing in Chatham, Lighthouse Beach. Eastwood Hole Golf Course. Those folks say that's a private golf course. That's pretty upscale. And in the wintertime, they plow their parking lot and welcome skiers. So you can go there, park your car, or go sledding. Lots of good sledding for little kids there. So they're good citizens. Plus the scenery, cross-country skiing is nice. Yeah, you'd never get a cross-country ski trail that looks like that. And here's one that's the group coming down the mountain. And golf courses. Most golf courses allow you to ski there. That's the captain's course in Brewster. And then Provincetown skiing in the dunes. That's kind of exciting. Thoreau on the Atlantic. And here's the Chatham Lighthouse. And it's never too cold for ice cream. You can kind of see this ice cream theme coming through. And that's a Patty likes ice cream.
So you were just holding her cone.
I was what?
You were just holding her cone.
I was holding my phone.
It's so sad though, I look at those pictures, we haven't seen snow like that in 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
Ah.
Okay, there's a new adventure that Patty and I have discovered. This is our Cape. It's called both the Walking City Trail. And I saw an article in the Boston Globe once that said, gee, the Boston City Trail is opening up, the Walking City Trail. And there was a group of folks as part of an organization that put together a trail. Number one, we want to tour all of Boston. And number two, we want to hit a number of greenways that we can enjoy. And so Patty and I, the walk, 27 miles, 30 plus green spaces that you can traverse, and it hits 15 of the neighborhoods in Boston. Now Patty and I grew up in Boston. Have you got any Boston natives here? Okay, good. West Roxbury? Amen. Okay. That's one of them in there. And so I had heard about all of these neighborhoods growing up. And finally, I'm getting to see them and enjoy them. Okay, 27.4 miles, that's what it looks like. It starts down in Mattapan, down in the bottom, traverses through Boston, and it ends in Bunker Hill. And here's a typical day where we park at Boston Common Garage, take our bike out to Mass Ave, lock the bikes here, do a mile and a half or so, back to the car, and go get our bikes. So that's, I think that's a kind of a typical day. The hills. That bottom graph shows the hills, and there are a lot of hills out in Hyde Park and Rosendale and so forth. Walking Boston website says it's 27 miles, and for the convenience of the hiker, it breaks it down into 4 7-mile sections. Well, I'm 84 and Patty's 83. That's far too much. So instead of 4 sections, we broke it down into 19 sections. And we do a mile and a half at a time. There's one hike that hit 3 miles, and we did that pretty comfortably. Our approach, walk slow. Oh, thanks to Christy. We have a dog that lives in Dedham. And Christy, can we stay at your house tonight? Do you want to do a walk today and then another walk tomorrow morning? And thank you, Christy.
And Chris.
Another thing we did, they put park benches there for a reason, for people to sit on. And we felt obliged to sit on park benches and rest. And have nice lunches and ice cream. And while you're there, enjoy the art. There are art installations in many of the parks. The views are fantastic. Some of the neighborhoods you thought, oh, I'd never go there. They turned out to be quite pleasant and very nice, and you see the people, and they just seem like nice people, and the neighborhoods are nice. The greenways were great. Bike lanes on the city now. All the major bike highways, not highways, but major streets, bike lanes that you can travel on. Cityscapes and history of the park. So it's just been a wonderful approach. Technology, a necessary evil. Why doesn't it work? Hard to use. You need an app for everything. You know, if that's, you drive into a parking lot, and I said, ooh, there are no parking meters here, and there's a sign there that says, pay by going on to the downloading this web app, putting your credit card information in, putting in the number of your parking spot, and then you can park there. And if you park there without doing that, they'll come and, you know, give you a ticket or something. But we couldn't have done the walk without it. You know, if you look at Google Maps, it's just so great. The T has a system in it. You want to go from Savin Hill to some ballpark in Dorchester, and it'll tell you how to get there. Take the red line, get off, get on the green line, take the local bus. Just fantastic. So technology turned out to be good, although we hate it. Transportation. You know, when they published the four sections, they had a start and an end place, all near a T. But when you have 19 sections, that's 19 starting places, you have to find a spot, 19 ending places, and how to get between them. So we wound up using cars, commuter trains, subway red line, light rail, the green line, local buses, bikes, blue bikes, where you just show them your credit card and take a bike and drop it off later. We had to use Uber once. We were using 2 cars, and when we got to the second car, we found out we left the keys to that car back in the first one. So that was using Uber to make this happen. And then ferry. Starts at Mattapan Station. We started in January. The trails were icy. It was out and back, so that wasn't very pleasant. But then we continued. The tulip session in the public gardens was just great. And of course, one day I took a picture of my dashboard when we ended, and it was 110 degrees out. Remember that day? I don't think it ever hit 100 down here. I was up in Boston, and that hit 100 degrees. The riverway turned out to be one of our favorites, right in the middle of, you're familiar with the medical area up in Boston, it's all doctor's offices and hospitals. You go in, you make your appointment, you have your appointment out, and you hand your parking ticket stub to the guy there, and you wait a half an hour, just hustling and bustling. Well, less than a half a mile from that is the riverway. It's so pleasant. This is in the middle of Boston. That's some artwork as part of an installation. That's part of an artistic installation also, to talk about getting people together. Nice rivers. The bridges in the parks are just gorgeous. And on many occasions, you're in this place of tranquility, and all of a sudden a big skyscrapers jump out at you. Welcome to the Fenway Victory Garden, a huge public garden. Now, current status is, Patty and I have done all of the green and done 17 of the 19 walks, and in the upper corner we have 2 left to do, so we're almost there. And we'll do one of those on Saturday with all the kids, so finishing one at Monkey Hill. And that was just a fun discovery. We've been at it 6 months now, and we plan it and decide where we're going to eat and take walks, and it's just super. Okay, here's another off-cape. The Allagash. I was reading an article in Sports Illustrated. I used to devour that when I was in my teens up to my 40s. And I saw this article in there once about canoeing the Allagash River. You start in central Maine. The river flows north to Canada. There are tent areas all along the way. I said, that would be a great family vacation. So I said, family, do you want to do it? It's going to be exciting. Yeah, we'll do it. So what we did was drive to Millinocket, which is way up in Maine, took a seaplane with 2 canoes attached to the seaplane, took 2 trips. And it's 75 miles that you have to canoe from Churchill Lake to the Allagash. We can do it. We stayed in Millinocket. Can you hear me? I've had my mic down here. Have you been able to hear me?
Your mic's not working.
Sorry about that. We stayed at the Big Moose Inn in Millinocket, Maine. That was in the news, national news, about 4 years ago. That was the place that the scientists discovered was the starting, not the starting place, but the way they proved that COVID actually was transmitted among people. There was a wedding there, and they turned out one person had it. And then they went and tracked down all of the guests. And all of the guests after the wedding spread out to many different towns. And they checked them in this town, this town, and this town. And the scientists said, hey, that proves that COVID is transmitted from human to human. Not a great thing to be noted for. Okay, there's the seaplane. 2 trips. There's the pilot getting us into the canoes after the ride. And then we saw this, and this is where my heart sunk. I thought we were going to be on a river. It said Churchill Lake, but I thought it was going to be narrow. And I get out and said, we're going to Canada, which way do we go? So I said, I don't know. I'm not sure which way is the river. So I guessed, and you can see a little bump in the distance. And I thought the river flowing north would be going north, so it would just kind of take you along. But in a wide lake, there's no river flow, and the wind was in our face. And once we got to that point, way over on the right in the distance, I said, good, that's 3 miles. We have 13 more miles to canoe today. But we made it. There were the kids in the canoes. We were canoeing along, and all of a sudden a ranger on the side of the bank said, hey, come on over here. He said, you're going to hit some rapids now, not big ones, but give me all your belongings, and I will drive them around to the end of the rapids for $10. It was the best $10 I ever spent. He took all our sleeping bags, our food, brought them around, and we retrieved them later. And in the meantime, the kids' canoe tipped over. I remember being in the rapids, and there's Michael sitting on a rock in the middle of the rapids, and we finally retrieved him and made it to the end. Oh, then there was another sign. You better portage around this next fall. So we took it for it. So we get out of the canoe and carry in the canoe. And I think Christy, she was tired. She wanted to be sitting in the canoe as we were carrying. But no, Christy, you can't. She said, okay, I'll carry all of this stuff. And there's Christy taking the tents around the rapids. And those are the rapids, it turns out. I think we were pretty pleased that we dragged them around. We pulled in and I said, okay, this is it for tonight. Let's all go hunt for bears or something. Look at the wildlife. And after a 15-mile canoe, it's pretty exhausting. So, and the next thing, the sandbars. They only let so much water out to fill the rivers. And there's a very narrow channel where the water is deep enough to float your canoe. But if you go off that and hit a sandbar, it's just a lot of work to get it back in shape. So in addition to paddling, dragging your canoes across sandbars, it's tough. Oh, this one, I took that, and that was when the group was planning the mutiny. What can we do to Dad to stop this insanity? And I think Patty and that is coming up with some good ideas. And the kids are nodding their heads. That's pretty good. One of the reasons was like that river there was pretty wide. There was nobody else kayaking there. There was one group, and it was 2 clients and a guy, and he had a motor on the back of his canoe. So they just kind of went by. But other than that, 4 days, we didn't see anybody. However, every day about 3 o'clock, a ranger came down the stream. And if you were hurt and ran out in the water and waved, hopefully the ranger would see you and he could help you if you were in trouble. But that was another scary piece of that. Oh, and Christy has a fishing rod there. And we had plans of, well, every night, why don't we throw our line in the lake and catch a fish and we'll fry it up. We never saw a fish. We finally, Allagash at last. And we said, there it is, that's where we're going to meet our guy that's going to drive us back to Millinocket. As we approached that landing, this dog that was about this high came running down that lawn, drooling. And I said, maybe we better not land here. So we landed at a different place and finally got a ride back. Now, the epilogue. We met up with Patty's parents for a little vacation. And Grandma asked, Patty's mother asked David, David, how was the trip? Rated on 1 to 10. And David thought and said, it was a 4, Grandma. Later that evening, Grandma came up to me and said, Mark, I have to tell you my discussion with David. David said, Grandma, it wasn't a 4, I just wanted to make my father feel good. He said it was a 2. But part of the epilogue is, when David's kids were about the age he was when we had the trip, he took them on an overnight canoe trip with some of their cousins in the Boundary Waters Wilderness area that came close to Canada, so maybe he had mellowed a little bit. Time has softened their ratings. I think now it's up to a 4. But it's still one of the most talked about vacations we've had. It's an expensive story. So that was kind of a fun, adventurous vacation with the kids. And they were all good sports about it. I have one last piece here. Looking ahead. Looking ahead. As Patty's favorite saying is, Mark, we're not running out of money, we're running out of time. Let's spend the money. So my final adventure is, where should my remains remain? So we've been pondering that for a while. In the old days, you were brought up in the church. You were baptized there. You got married there. You went to church there again, and when you died, you were buried there. So when the next generation came through, they went to the church and, oh, let's go take a walk through the cemetery and say hello to Mom and Papa something. But that situation no longer exists. There'll be nobody, if we were buried in Howard, none of the kids would ever come back again just to see where we're buried. So this whole dynamic of that intergenerational lifestyle or lifespan has gone. So the question again is, where would my remains remain? If I'm buried in Howard there, nobody would come across. Mark McGrath, who was that? No neighbors to talk to, just not a very friendly place. So I think the answer to that is a virtual cemetery. Everything's going virtual nowadays. So we'll have a virtual cemetery with remains. So I told the kids and Patty, when I die, I want to be cremated. The ashes can be split between the 4 kids, Patty and the 3 kids, and they can do with them what I suggest that they do with them, is find a place that Patty and I would like that you would visit, and leave my ashes there. Okay? Well, we were walking in Chicago where Mike lives, and said, gee, that rock might be a nice tombstone for us. Mike would drop our ashes there, or my ashes there. You know, it's nice, it's got, that's a bike park there, people go back and forth, that's a high school in the background. And there's something about train tracks that just go on to infinity back and forth. So that would be a nice place. We can virtually inscribe the gravestone. Mark and Patty, born 1940 and 1942. That was Patty and I on a virtual tombstone and everything. But now, how do we modernize this whole process? How do we modernize this intergenerational connection that they had in the old days? Well, it's an app for your phone. So what will happen is we will have an app for our phone, so that on our wedding anniversary, when the calendar comes up on our anniversary on November 7th, it'll go trigger an event that says Mark and Patty's anniversary. So every November 7th, they're reminded it's a memory, and that's a lot better than visiting a graveyard. Well, that's it, folks.